Along everyone to a very exciting interview which I'm really proud to be hosting with you. It's with my good friend Daniel Priestley. And Daniel, before we get into it, welcome on board to the webinar.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent, excellent. And we're about to get started, but before we do, I just want to give a quick introduction to Daniel Priestley. And I'm sure that many of you out there already know of Daniel. You've either read his book or you've been to one of his events or programs, but regardless, Dan and I have been doing business now for since 2004, believe it or not. And Daniel is a best-selling author on Amazon. He is literally someone who has been launching multiple businesses since early 2000s. He's been involved with multiple launches that have gone from 0 to 1 million in turnover, many within less than 12 months. He's done this again and again. He's been involved with another business which was the first experience when Dan and I worked together, where we applied the rev sales system, which we'll be sharing with you a little bit about today. But we applied this methodology as well as other components, which allowed us to take a business from, it was turning over about £0.6 million, and we turned that business to just shy of £7.5 million in revenue in 12 months. So it was phenomenal growth. And that was part of the reason why we ended up coming here actually to the UK, and we've been involved with very many successful launches since then. Dan is someone who is, as I said, he's just launched, or not just launched the KPI program, but he just launched it internationally into Australia. So he's now running international business. He's got a lot of interest from other countries around the world, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the program, Dan. And it's really looking forward to sharing the insights that we're going to be talking about of how you've applied your sales and marketing philosophies throughout the course of these various businesses that you've launched with. Because one of the things that we're going to be talking about is Dan's been involved with literally launching everything from mattresses to financial service products to franchise products, through to training courses, property products and programs, and and most recently we're going to be talking about his current rollout of the Key Person of Influence program, which is getting astounding results for many entrepreneurs across the world. So without any further ado, Dan, it's absolutely fantastic to have you on the program.
Pleasure to be here, Mike.
Yeah, excellent. And there's going to be two halves of this conversation. Just when you're tuning into this, the first half we're going to be talking about some of the key philosophies, the key strategies that have allowed Dan to achieve this rapid growth, and a lot of it's going to be applied from the context of how we've used the rev sales system, which is a structured sales process which any business can use to be able to create a lot more strategy, structure, and allow you to increase your results significantly. So we'll be sharing with you the key insights around that. And then what we'll also be doing in the second half is that we've got a bunch of questions that you've generated. So I just want to make sure that we can cover those, and we'll look to entwine some of the answers in some of the first half as we go through the first 6 key lessons. But then in the second half, if we don't cover all those questions, I'll make sure I can pass them along. And you'll be having a worksheet that's with you as well. So make sure you take lots of notes. Dan's going to be giving you a flurry of ideas which you can go away and implement and execute immediately. So Dan is very creative when it comes to just thinking on the spot of solutions for your challenges. So make sure you take lots of notes, use the worksheet that's been provided for you, and without any further ado, let's get into it. And I think one of the first questions I'd like to start with, Dan, is you've been involved with so many different product launches. Like, what is one of the most successful launches you've been involved with over the years?
I think the most relieving product launch is always the first one.
Yeah.
So when I was 21 years old, I broke away from my employer. I'd been working for a guy who was probably one of the best product launch marketers in Australia, and I'd been shadowing him around for 2 years. So for 2 years I'd been watching everything he did, and eventually it got to the point where I said I'm going to go off and do my own product launch. I took my own credit card, I put quarter-page advertising onto my own credit card, which I think was about $7,500 in Australian dollars. And I rented a venue and I organised this event and I put this whole thing together. And I remember the first product launch, we had about 75 people turn up into the room. We had structured every single thing to an absolute fine point and fine detail. And then finally at the end of the night we made 17 sales. I think the average sale was about $2.5 to $3 grand. So
Wow.
I'd clocked up, 35,000 pounds, I think, $35,000, I think, at my first launch, with overheads of about 10 or 11 grand. But I tell you, that 10 or 11 grand, that was big, big, big money when I was 21. So that was a relief.
Particularly when it's on your credit card, hey? Because I know that story. You pretty much got the credit card and put it all on there, saying, "Hey,
This better
let's go
work.
for
Yeah.
it." Excellent. Okay, so yeah, so let's just mute that too, Dan, if you wouldn't mind, just in the short term. Yep. So we get a bit of echo here, folks, which is a bit challenging. So we're just going to make sure that when Dan's not speaking, we'll put him on silent, which is unfortunate because we'll be getting through some great stuff. So to start with, though, I mean, because I think that what underpins any successful business or any successful company, and particularly with the launches you've been involved with, I'm sure you'd agree, Dan, that there's key strategies, key lessons that many people can apply and that really underpin the success of any launch. So one of the key lessons that we've discussed, which have made the various launches you've been involved with so successful, one of the first strategies, and again, this will be on your worksheet, you want to take some notes here, is to make sure you develop an empowered mindset and intention. And, I'd love for you just to share with us, like, how do you actually apply something like this when it comes to launching a business or creating a sales process or strategy around your company? How do you actually apply this?
So I think the first thing is that I don't think you have much of an option in business than to have an empowered mindset or intention. Now I consider some people may be listening and they may be in sales, in the sales role, in which case that is your business. You are in the business of making sales. You have a product that you're selling. Someone else, I would say, view it as a joint venture where someone else is providing the product and your business is to sell that product, and that's a great first step into business, by the way. But in business, you either have two ways to look at the world. One is that you're able to have an impact, you're able to be empowered, you're able to make a difference, you're able to adopt and change things. Or the second one is that you're not, and that you're actually at the mercy of the world, and you're at the mercy of circumstance. Now, I think after 10 years running product launches, I think that yes, there are times in the marketplace where it's better than others. Yes, there are times or markets or products that are better than others. But who chooses which market you're in? Who chooses the product that you're in? Some people have said to me, well, see, I'm not in control because I live in the UK and the UK is in recession. I said, well, who chose to be in the UK? Who's choosing to be in the UK right now? Is there any reason why you couldn't be jumping on a plane and checking out a different market if you wanted to? So it's this idea that you have to start from the idea that you are in control. In entrepreneurship, at its essence, is about empowerment. It empowers people all over the world to take charge of their life and to actually have an impact in the world. So I think it's the first mindset, and it's very difficult to go on from here if you haven't started from that mindset of having intention, empowerment. If you're lacking that, then anything I say to you, you can always answer, "Oh, but it's not me. It's some other boogeyman."
Mm-hmm. And from that context as well, it can be challenging though in business, Dan, because sometimes there's a lot of knocks. You get rejection, and one of the questions that we did have coming through was about how do you overcome the fear of rejection, and because you can try and put yourself in an empowered mindset, and a lot of the training we do with our clients, we have people who this is a big stumbling block for many people. Some people who are really confident and just carry themselves a lot of esteem just jump into the sales role and can do really well, and that's terrific. But there's many people who they fear the sale a bit, they get caught up in their own stuff. So have you got any tips for overcoming that fear of rejection and or developing an empowered mindset when perhaps the chips are down and things are tough?
So I believe that it very much comes down to preparation. The amount of preparation that you do prior to any sale or business is going to give you the confidence that you need. So, for example, before I went into business, I spent 2 years riding shotgun on every marketing campaign, every sales event, every product launch that I could possibly get my hands on. And because I had been through so many cycles over 2 years, I knew exactly what to expect. Now, one of the philosophies that we have in our company at the moment is that anyone who joins our sales team, we actually don't get them selling on day one or day two or even the first week. The first week when we have a salesperson, it's a combination of call up our existing clients and ask them what they think of us, so that they
Mm.
can actually just purely talk to some people and hear good positive things. Secondly, we say go out and just listen in with either me or go and listen in with one of our existing salespeople and just ride
Mm.
shotgun. And you don't have to say
Mm.
anything, you don't have to do anything, but just do a week of listening in on sales appointments. By the end of the week,
Mm.
you can actually see that some sales appointments come off, some sales appointments don't come off.
Yep.
Some sales appointments, the salesperson disqualifies the person who's sitting in front of them, and they actually end the sales appointment by saying, "I don't think what we have is right."
Mm.
So you actually get to see a lot of the different outcomes. Now, the type of preparation that I love is the type of preparation where you're actually seeing what's happening live in the marketplace. Yes, it's
Mm.
good to have, I think it's amazing to have academic knowledge, but I think getting out there in the field is really powerful. When you start to realize that a well prepared sales script produces a consistent result, and by consistent result, 1 in 10 might be a consistent result. 1 in 3 might be a consistent result, but each sales script that you use tends to produce a consistent result with a set of leads. And when you see that happening, then you actually realize that it's all just part of the process. There is no real rejection or
Mm.
failure. It's actually just part of having the conversation. The conversation, when you've seen other people do it, you realize that the roof doesn't cave in. You've still got your arms and legs. Um, there's still all is well in the world. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you just touched on a lot of fantastic points, which we're going to be covering in more detail throughout some of the other lessons that we're going to be covering. But, one of the things you mentioned is about preparation, which is so important because, most people I train and we work with in Rev is that they just jump into a sales appointment. They don't necessarily prepare properly. They don't necessarily know where they're leading a client. And, this is one of the foundations of any successful company, whether they're large or small. The people who are really good at being able to convert a prospect into a client is someone who has a well-oiled and well-defined sales process. So could you walk us through, Dan, perhaps some of the sales processes you've had in the past, maybe one example from the past and one example of how it's being applied, your current sales process and the type of preparation that you put into something like that?
So we use the Rev sales system, and we have done for many years. Um, the the idea behind the Rev system is that buyers like to buy in a particular way. There's a
Mm.
predictable set of steps that people go through, and when they go through those predictable steps, there's predictable transition points. So people like to at one point in the sale, they like to weigh up their options. They like to create criteria. They like to get an
Mm.
understanding of what their criteria is. So at that point in the sales process, we're not trying to close a sale. We're trying to help them clearly identify what their criteria is.
Mm.
At another part in the sales process, they actually just want to see if they can like you and trust you. So at that point in the sales process, we're not trying to close a sale. We're just trying to find some common ground to start with. Um, so look, we go through. Um, I'll tell you a couple of insights into myself and my business. I've been described as someone who's naturally good at sales. So
Mhm.
people say, "Oh, Daniel, you're just natural salesperson," because I can naturally chat away and talk and all of that sort of stuff. But the truth is this: there was a time, even just a few months ago, where I bought into the myth that I'm a natural salesperson, and I had some really important sales meetings, and I'm talking tens of thousands of pounds worth of business on the line, and I just thought I could go in and wing it, and I didn't really do a process. I just basically went in and thought I'd make it up as I go, which sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't work for me. And I had 3 meetings in a row that should have produced tens of thousands of pounds each meeting. And instead of those meetings producing tens of thousands of pounds, virtually nothing happened. And I scratched my head and I thought, what is it that's going on here? I'm meant to be this natural, gifted salesperson. And what I ended up doing is just mapping back out, wait a second, I've just forgotten the basics. What is the buying cycle? What is the sales cycle? And then I realized that what I was doing is I just wasn't respecting people's natural buying cycle. So I went back, and it took me about 2 hours to re-engineer a new script for that particular presentation. The following presentations ever since, for the last couple of months, have consistently produced 4 out of 10 sales. So 4 out of 10 people that I meet, now we're talking about significant chunks of change. The difference between meeting with 20 people and getting 1 sale versus meeting with 10 people and getting 4 sales, just by going through the sales process and the sales cycle. So I would go so far as to say this whole idea or this myth about the natural salesperson, it's not serving many people. I don't think it's a good serving. I think the natural salesperson is the salesperson who has the common sense to actually stop and look at what works.
It's so interesting you say that, Dan, because the next case study that I'm going to be actually delivering in the next sequence of or webinars like this is actually a quick snapshot of some of the UK's and the world's leading businessmen and entrepreneurs, because it's so fascinating when you look into the history of them. And I'm sure you'd agree, Dan, because you like myself love to just study successful people, particularly in business. And when you study their backgrounds, guess what you find out? All of these people at one stage or another cut their teeth mastering sales. Whether it's Alan Sugar or it's Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote the #1 business book on the planet, or there's Duncan Bannatyne, where he sold ice creams out of his his ice cream van and got really creative with his sales ideas, or whether it's James Caan and how he literally changed his sales philosophies when he was cold calling companies when he started his company Man Group. So it's very interesting, and I completely agree with you on that comment, Dan, because it is a myth about the consummate salesperson, but it's just people who have said, you know what, I want to be good at business, and to be good at business, I have to learn how to sell.
Absolutely. Last night I was with a friend of mine who she sold her company for £20 million in 2008, and she she's just written a book. Her name is Lara Morgan, and it's a great book called More Balls Than Most: How to Juggle Your Way to Success. And
I love it.
and the first chapter, she basically says, I'm not good at much, but the one thing I am good at is I'm good at selling. And she basically, it goes through, and her philosophy is that your first 2 years in business, forget about marketing, forget about software and clever little bits of add-ons and those sorts of expenses.
Social media.
Yeah, she said your first 2 years of business, run it from your bedroom, sit on the phone, blood, sweat and tears, pick up the phone and sell. And she said any of the companies that she wants to work with, the first question she has to answer in her mind is, can this business leader sell? Can they actually, if needed, can they get their point across in such a way that other people want to take action? I mean, when we're talking about selling, what we're really talking about, I think there's too much emphasis based on the idea that money has to change hands. When we're talking about selling, we're talking about getting your point across and getting the other person to buy into the ideas, and for there to be a common bridge made where two people come together and say, hey, we agree on something, we want to work on something that's mutually beneficial, let's do it. Now, sometimes in order to do it, some money has to change hands. sometimes time, sometimes other resources are involved. But
Yep.
but really, what we're doing is asking ourselves the question: can we have a conversation where we get buy-in from other people? There's the classic story. The little kid runs in the room and jumps on the father's lap and looks up puppy dog eyes and says, you know, Dad, can I please, can we go down the shop and get an ice cream? I mean, that's sales. It's communicating the idea, getting the buy-in. So let's, yeah. So I mean, I think it's an incredibly important skill for anyone in business.
Yeah, completely agreed. And I think particularly Dan, like I've seen you on many occasions where, we've been in meetings together, and there'll be an oddball thrown from someone that we're in negotiations with, and all of a sudden you just come up with this creative response where you have this magnificent ability to be able to connect with people, be authentic and genuine, which is one of the lessons we'll talk about in a second. But then also be able to get the client or the prospect or the person that we're talking or negotiating with to get them on board. And I completely agree with you. You've made some great points there about it's not just about exchanging cash. It really is just about getting people to see your point of view and getting them to agree with that. Because when you do that, it is so beneficial when you're negotiating the next level up of your business. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And one of the other challenges I think which people in business often get confused between is the distinction between sales and marketing strategies. And this is something which you're very clever at doing as well, which is having clear differentiation between the two, because they're not the same. And particularly this day and age with social media and all these different forms of online traffic generation through websites, through pay-per-click, through AdWords, through joint ventures and running events, etc. There's so many different marketing strategies, but there's a very clear differentiation between sales strategies and marketing strategies. So could you talk a little bit about how you apply that concept into your current program? I know with KPI, for example, you're getting some fantastic results. Would you like to just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, with KPI, the well, let's talk sales and marketing. So marketing is all about creating an opening. It's about opening up to the world and sharing what it is that you have, and inviting people to come along and to see what it is that you've got to offer, and to come and have a conversation. Really, to basically inviting people into the conversation. That's marketing. Sales is about progressing things forward and actually getting rid of all the other options and saying, hey, let's do something together. I know that there's 100 things that you could be out there doing, but here's what I think is a good idea. For your goals and for your success, I think we could help you on some certain areas. So essentially, that marketing is just that opening up to the conversation, and sales is really arriving at some conclusions in the conversation and arriving at some decisions in the conversation. So they're both very important points. I think that people lose sight of the fact that for a small business is very different to big business. When you have a multi-billion pound budget, if you're BMW or Coca-Cola or Boeing or one of these multi-billion dollar corporations, sales and marketing, marketing might be brand awareness campaigns, right? Because across, I don't know how that works because I've never managed billion-dollar budgets. For a small business, for a little business, which I'm guessing is most of the people listening, your marketing is really about getting people to come and have a conversation, a sales conversation with you. The entire point of your marketing in small business is to invite people to a sales conversation. That's really what you're doing. You're creating an opportunity to sit eyeball to eyeball with someone, and or to talk to them on the phone, to present to them your pots and pans, and to have the sales conversation. So, this whole idea that we just need to go out there and be really friendly to the world and be just purely do brand awareness or just purely go networking, and then the frustration of but that's not leading to sales. What leads to sales is specifically creating a campaign that leads to sales. Creating an opportunity for you to present to people and then to have a conversation about why they should be working with you. I think networking is amazing for joint ventures. Networking is amazing for expanding your circle in business. I think social media and social networking is amazing for learning and finding out what's out there in the marketplace, and maybe alerting yourself to some of the people who you should be talking to. But at the end of the day, if you're not inviting people to sit eyeball to eyeball and have a sales conversation, you cannot be upset that you don't have sales, because that's just how it works in small business.
Completely agree. And actually, I think whilst we're on this point, let's the next lesson is about understanding the psychology of influence. But I'd like to just quickly jump to lesson number 5, because this really ties in nicely with what you're mentioning here, Dan, around the different ideas of your marketing strategies. And the way I see them is that they almost one sits on top of the other. So that you've got the classic example of the marketing funnel. You've got so many different options out there of how you can get your, in your terms, Dan, opening up the relationship. But then it all filters down into a key process that you take someone through when you're eyeball to eyeball with someone. And again, we've used this strategy for using the rev sales system from when we launched the franchise company. We helped to launch the franchise company in Australia to go from 0.6 to 7.3 million, through to every launch in between, and right through to the current strategies you're using at the moment. I know that you've got some very well-oiled processes, so that as soon as somebody comes in to the through the marketing funnel, would you like to explain to us what is your sales process from that point going forward, in terms of and knowing your numbers and knowing conversion rates and stuff? If you wouldn't mind sharing that with us, to give people a practical example of how this is actually used in reality.
Sure. So I think no game is going to be any fun if you aren't keeping track of the score, and if you can't if you can't measure. And
Yeah.
it's fairly predictable as well. Over large numbers of people, it's predictable what the response is. So in Australia, when we ran a lot of advertising campaigns, we could almost predict, within 2 or 3 people, how many people would respond to an ad simply by how much we were spending. We knew in a particular, we knew in one particular magazine or newspaper that per phone call that we received was $62 per phone call. So we knew if we were taking a $6,200 ad, we knew we would get 100 phone calls. And then we know predictably that if we talk to those 100 people, we'll only get through to maybe 60 or 70 of them trying to call them.
Yep.
We also then knew out of 60 to 70, only maybe 20 people would want to sit with us face to face, and out of 20, maybe 4 or 5 wanted to do business with us. So we actually knew the numbers. So I mean today our sales team, they might attempt to connect with 100 people. Out of 100 people, they'll actually connect with, say, 60. Out of 60, they'll have about 24 come through and actually have a sales presentation. Out of 24, we'll get 7 or 8 people come through and buy. So we know that what's motivational about that is we know that for every time we go out and try and connect with 100 people, we can expect to see 7 or 8 sales. I think there's a couple of things that need to be measured in any sales process. It's important. Now, you don't need to have super high software systems and Salesforce. We have that today because we manage something like 20 or 30,000 leads at the moment. We have a lot of different opportunities flying around and a lot of different business stuff going on. So we use software. In the early days, right up to millions in turnover, we just had Excel spreadsheets. And that took us right through into the 7-figure revenues. But you want to know your numbers because you want to know whether something's working or not working. You want to know pretty quickly whether something's working or not working, and you want to know pretty quickly if you should be removing the emotion from it. So, for example, when you're actually on the phone talking to someone and they say, "Oh no, I'm too busy to have a meeting," if your expectation is that 100% of people are going to be able to have a meeting, then you get pretty disappointed pretty quickly. When you know your numbers and you know that out of 100 people, only 24 are interested in having a meeting, well, then it actually becomes quite predictable that you've just got to call 100 people and get 24 people to a meeting. And you start to know when you've had a good day. You say, "Hey, I had a good day today. I called 100 people today and 32 people wanted to have a meeting." Right? So you can actually say, "I wonder if I was doing anything different that was working particularly well."
Yep.
Here's the other thing that most people forget to measure and don't measure and don't do. And we really train our sales guys on this. Most people don't keep notes about their sales calls, and they don't go back to their notes. So quite regularly, someone will say, "Now's not a good time, and literally this whole week's terrible, but I'm going on holidays and I get back in 6 weeks. Could you give me a call then?" So most salespeople don't do anything with that. They're just so busy getting on to the next call. So they forget to put, they forget that, yeah, we do a lot of business simply by trying to follow up when people say to us, "Can you follow up with me in a month?" We do follow up in a month, and in most cases, that's actually a really great conversation, because we can start the conversation with, "Hey, you asked us to call you today, and here we are, we're calling you. A month ago you said give us a call, and we are calling," which is nice. The other thing too is during face-to-face appointments, many people say, I'm going to work on this on my own for 6 months and see how I go. And a great thing that we do is we say, well, in that case, let's follow up in 6 months and see how you did go. And would you agree that in 6 months' time, if you haven't hit the result that you want, maybe we could help you get there? And so having a bit of a longer-term view gets you off the treadmill eventually.
Yeah, and this is the really important thing about it, is that it's a really good reality check. So that what happens is that that if you're not getting the results you want, because a lot of times business owners and entrepreneurs, we get so focused and excited, we think everybody wants their products and services, and you think, wow, I've got 10 or 15 people to talk to, and it's like, oh, hang on, once you know the numbers, you might realize that 10 to 15 people is really only going to result in maybe one sale, as opposed to, people often get the idea that might lead to 5 sales. So when you actually get to know your numbers, you can then start to say, hang on, so if I need to convert 25% of people to an appointment, then that means I just need to get more people, more appointments. And then you know where to focus your time and energy and resources. And it's a really good reality check. And there's a really important point which I want to cover next, or just after the next lesson, because it's about what often people get confused, or they try and say, well, hang on, it's all about the numbers. What about the integrity of the people? What about just selling people that they don't need? And you and I, Dan, had a really good conversation yesterday about this particular concept, because it's not just about putting people through the process. It's really about coming from the space of qualifying and being client focused with them to make sure they're doing the best. You're serving them in the best way possible. But before we get on that lesson, just wanted to go back to one of the things which helps with increasing conversion rates at various stages of your sales and or marketing process. And I think you'd agree with me, Dan, that every masterful person in business really understands the psychology of influence. They study it. They really get to know the ins and outs of what does it take to influence somebody. And a quick question I have for you, Dan. How many people do you know of your friends who are all millionaires and people who've built billion-pound companies, etc.? How many of them do you know that do not either study the psychology of influence or have cut their teeth mastering sales?
It doesn't really exist. Um,
So it doesn't happen.
I mean, if I think about the most successful people I know, they absolutely love understanding what makes humans tick, what makes people tick. They love behavioral psychology and understanding what creates influence, what works, what makes a successful message. Um, the other common topic is stories. How do you tell a great story? How do you get a story to
Mm,
spread? How do you get an idea into the world so that it spreads?
mm,
How do you get that engagement or connection? These are constant conversations that are coming up all the time.
mm, mm. And they really are. I mean, I know people who, a good friend of ours who sold his company for 5 million a few years ago. I did quite a bit of work with him early this year, and we spent days literally analyzing the process and understanding what objections do we get back, what sort of things were the problems that we were facing, where were the gaps in the process so that caused people to have more resistance as opposed to less. And as a result of that, we helped them achieve their greatest month turnover in the month of January when it was supposed to be a quiet season. We did just shy of just over two and a half, no, a quarter of £1 million in sales. But this comes from literally looking at the sales process and understanding what's working for you and what's working against you. Um, and is there any sort of insights you'd like to just add on that point, Dan, around how you perhaps applied this throughout your various business launches?
Uh, I mean, it's such a big topic. Quite literally, we're always looking for what campaigns are working, and not just our own campaigns, looking at what other people are doing, looking at the best research and discovering sort of it's not because we have to. It's the kind of stuff we enjoy doing. It's I
Mm.
really genuinely am fascinated about what makes people tick. Why do people get attracted to some ideas that are clearly just crazy ideas, and why do some people get attracted to ideas that, or not get attracted to ideas that by all rights should be a good idea? Um,
Yeah.
you know, it blows my mind that people will happily sit and watch game shows and news and just the worst possible stuff for your brain every single night, and yet trying to get them to do something like recycle or eat less meat or be a bit healthier is really hard work. So it's interesting to find out who's successful at getting groups of people to take action and do something, and how do you do that?
Mm. And it's a very big uh, philosophy, or maybe not philosophy is the right word, but a very good strategy or tactic is just to do exactly what you said, Dan, is to watch what other people do and copy it. In copywriting, often there's a common language used of a swipe file, which is you join a lot of mailing lists of people who are really good at writing copy, and then you literally, when you like a piece of copy that you like, you literally just copy paste it, put it in your swipe file, and you reuse it to your own context. So, same thing can be applied from sales and marketing strategies. If you get influenced around somebody, why did you feel influenced and what did they do? What did they say? What questions did they ask you? Investing the time into that can be really wise investment of time because, as you said, Dan, you can go from a conversion rate of 1 and 2, 2 and 10 to 4 to 10, which is a 100% return on investment. So, anyway, so the
One thing
final.
I'd just quickly say on that is you definitely want to significantly change the swiped copy.
Yes.
Um, the I often get people swiping my copy, and
Yep. Yep.
and it makes me feel a lot less likely to want to do a joint venture with them anytime in the future. Um,
Mm.
but if someone swipes the structure of my copy and says there's a structure
Yes.
to this, what's the thinking behind this, then I'm happy with it. If they change it significantly, I think you know just yeah, don't necessarily have to have a swipe file of exactly your industry. You could actually go outside your industry and see what's working in similar
Yeah.
industries, and do that. But I absolutely think it's a great idea to become a scientist and study, what's influencing you and which marketing campaigns are working.
And I think it leads perfectly onto the next point, which is about being authentic, genuine, and client focused. And I think you've raised a very worthwhile point there too, Dan, which is about, you've got to be genuine and authentic with it. If you're just going to copy, paste, and send, the reality of it is that that's not your marketplace. that particular person who's writing that copy or created that campaign is specific to their marketplace. So you've got to be able to look at the structure of what they've done, and then look at your marketplace and say, hang on, so what are their challenges? What are their objections? Okay, because if you use the same one, it's not going to be effective at all. And like you said, it'll have the reverse effect, because when someone notices that you just copied and pasted, it's going to have the opposite effect. So, but this is a really important point, which I think wraps up the key lessons, because this concept of being authentic, genuine, and client focused permeates throughout everything you do, all the strategies, all the lessons that we've spoken about here. And I think that you shared would you mind sharing the story, Dan, that you just shared with me yesterday about, about when you really have to be client focused and about being authentic with people? Because when you do understand the skills of influence, you have to be careful, because you can make people do things that's not in their best interest. That's why it's really important to have the right intention, the right mindset, and the right space that you're coming from. Otherwise, you can get yourself in trouble. But we had a really interesting conversation about this just yesterday, Dan. Would you mind sharing the story about how recently you've had some conversations with people, and and you advised them? Actually, I'll let you share the story.
I think you're talking about quite literally. Yesterday, I had in the morning I had a meeting with a guy who was looking at becoming a client, and his business is a lot larger than most of our clients. So he's turning over something like 15-20 million, in his business, and he came along with his financial director, and he was really open and interested in participating and becoming one of our clients. And then I asked him the question, what is it that you're hoping to actually achieve? What are you trying to get out of doing the KPI program, and being part of our key person of influence group? And when he listed off the things that he wanted to achieve from the KPI program, they're actually not things that we cover. So he wanted things like, I want to really create a strategic direction for my whole organisation as to where we go next. And he said, I want to have a look at where we might be just, dropping the ball. And there's a number of things that he said, and none of it seemed to match up in my mind as being, the right sort of stuff as far as what we actually deliver. So I said, look, at this point in the meeting, I've got to tell you straight up, this isn't for you. We don't cover the stuff that you're trying to achieve. Is all the stuff that you should be looking for in your business right now, but it's not the stuff that we cover in this particular program. As a client of ours, you're not going to get that. You're going to be frustrated. You'll have spent 30 weeks with us as a client, and we'll keep pulling you away from those things, not reinforcing them. And I totally understand that they are the things you should be focused on. So let me introduce you to a friend of mine who does do that sort of stuff. I'll provide an email introduction. There's nothing in it for me, other than I really genuinely think you two should be talking. And he appreciated that. He said, wow, okay, that's really great. Now, affordability was not an issue. There's no issue that he would have been able to afford becoming a client. He could have paid us the money up front. Had I twisted, contorted, or bulldozed the situation, I'm sure it wouldn't have been that hard to actually make a sale. But literally, it's a situation where I know, 30 weeks from now, I'm not going to have a client who's raving about us. I'm going to have a client who feels a little bit deflated. Now, anyone who's running a great business like that is probably an influential person. So I'd rather not have an influential person who is a bit disappointed that they were a client because it wasn't right for their needs at the time. Now, funnily enough, one of the big goals that this particular guy has is to exit his company. And at the end of the conversation, he said, I'm only a year away from exiting the business. After I exit the business, I want to write a book about it. I want to get out there and be a key person in the industry. But I don't want to do that until I've focused on getting this exit right. So at some point, I have no doubt that this is someone who,
Why would he go anywhere else? Why would he go anywhere else?
Exactly. Here's another situation. I'll give you another situation. walked in. I was walking past one of my sales guys on the sales team, and he was having a sales appointment and sitting down having coffee with this woman at the members club, and I happened to be in the members club. And he called me over and he said, Dan, can you have a chat? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? And anyway, we had a chat, and this woman was basically really trying to berate him and really trying to force her, force her way, and just she was trying to bully him around, trying to demonstrate that that he was somehow being unethical, or really it was just she was really had her defences up and her guard up and all of that sort of stuff, and she was quite emotional. And I said I'm just really curious what's been going on in the conversation, and she admitted that basically she'd done all the talking, and that she also said that I've just had bad experiences in the past and all of this sort of stuff, and it just kept going. And I ended up saying, realistically, I just don't think there's going to be a good fit here. Clearly, you've had some really bad experiences in the past. It's not our organisation. It's not the types of things that we do. But we're looking to work with people who are quite positive about their future and who are looking to score a goal and who don't view us as the enemy. So I just don't think this is right. At the end of that conversation, I put her in touch with some people that she might benefit from talking to. But our sales guy said, "Oh, Dan, are you mad at me? Are you annoyed that I wasn't able to get the sale?" And I said, "Absolutely not. That's not the type of client that we want to deal with. I could tell straight away this is the type of client who's going to demand 10 times what every other client wants from us, and is going to give us grief the whole way through the process." And I said, mate, we don't need extra clients like that. We want to work with people who we feel good about working with. I said, if you have a situation where you genuinely don't feel good about working together, then it's totally okay to respectfully not take on the client. And and that's totally fine in our organisation. That's fine. We're looking for great clients who we can kick a goal with and really deliver, and who are going to be happy at the end of the process. So now I've given you two stories about where we turned away people who we could have turned around, and normally most of the people who come to us actually love what we do and have no dramas coming on board, and we get great conversions and all that sort of stuff. But it just gives you a couple of examples as to your goal is not to desperately try and close every single person who has a credit card. Your goal is to create it. I believe this language of closing the sale is a pretty negative thing. The way I see our sales process is that we create an open door. We give people the opportunity to walk through the open door and join us on the other side and become a client. And it's their choice if they want to walk through that door. And it's our choice to let people know what it's going to be like on the other side of the door, and to give an accurate and compelling reason to come through. But not everyone wants to walk through the door, and that's fine. So we don't think of it as closing people. We think of it as we create an opening. If someone wants to be part of that, they can. If they completely don't want to be part of it, that's fine as well.
Cool. Excellent. Thanks, Dan. Excellent. Thanks, Dan. There's some great insights there, and I think that at the heart of this, I think what you're sensing from Dan's responses as well is that it's about the intention you have around this, which is one of the first points we covered, because your intention determines the outcome, and it's either positive or negative, and those intentions or those outcomes will be either positive or negative towards your business in the future. Had Dan said yes to those clients, got them on board, it would have caused more hassle for the clients, which means that in the future they would have had negative stories going out there potentially about that. So, it's when you have the right intention, it gives you the ability to say yes and no to clients, and to make sure you hold their interest at heart. And I'd say that's what lies at the heart of the rev sales system as well, is keeping that at the forefront of your mind. But we're about to lead into questions now. So thanks, Dan, for sharing with these great lessons. One of the first questions I had, since we're on the topic of KPI and so on, is that someone's mentioned here. One of our clients has said, "How do I become a key person of influence?" So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about that, and feel free to mention about the program as well. Yeah, hand it over to you.
Great. So a key person of influence in every industry, there are key people of influence. They're the people who are at the center of the industry and the ones whose names always come up in conversation. The people who are very well connected, they earn a lot more money, they attract a lot more opportunity, and typically they have a lot more fun. So these key people of influence, they typically run industries. So there's 5 things that I noticed that key people of influence do that most people don't do, and it's across industry. So the first one is they're very good at their pitch. They understand how to pitch their business or themselves. 2, they publish. They write information. They create blogs or books. 3, they understand product, and they really understand how to create a valuable product and how to link that together in a business. 4, they have a great profile. If you Google them, you can actually find lots of stuff about them. They come up in all the right places. They might have won some awards, but they have a great profile. They probably speak at different events and conferences. And 5, the joint ventures and the partnerships. They actually go out there with an intention to do joint ventures and partnerships. So they're the five things you need to focus on if you want to become a key person of influence in your industry.
Mm. Excellent, excellent, and obviously the Google KPI, but will also be letting you on regular occasions know about what's happening with this particular program. It's got wholehearted endorsement. I think it's a fantastic program which people can stand to gain a lot of value from. Again, if you're at that stage and you're ready for it as well. So one of the other questions that we've had coming through, and we've got about just shy of 10 minutes to go, Dan. So we can sort of quick fire responses for a lot of our clients because they've invested some time to get some insights from you. And I know this is where you operate at your best, shooting from the hip with just your amazing insights. So one of the questions was, how do you streamline the sales process and overcome objections and get paid on time?
There's a number of questions on that one. I'd say if there's anything at all that you want to streamline the sales process, then the way you do that is you must prepare the meeting first. So you must send information to the client prior to the meeting. So you've got to have a situation where you've sent them articles, you've sent them a book, you've sent them a YouTube video. But the more you prepare them in advance, the more you'll streamline your sales meetings. Most of my sales meetings now, people have read my book, so they really just have a few final questions that they want to ask me, and they're ready to go. So that's how we streamline. Getting paid on time, you need to manage the process like you'd manage any process. When you take out a mortgage from the bank, every single month they send you a update as to your mortgage and how much you're paying and all of those things. They don't expect you to just turn up to the bank and pay them. So they have a very detailed process as to how do they increase the chances of getting people to pay their mortgage on time. So lots of statements, lots of reports, those sorts of things.
Yep, definitely, and it is. It's one of those things. But I think the preparation, what you're talking about, is really analysing the different elements of your sales process. When you look at it, because the other element there was overcoming objections. Look at the objections you're facing. What content could you produce before the meeting and or afterwards or during, which would help to overcome those objections as well. And we have a bit of a much longer question from someone who's running a HR consultancy, and unfortunately I don't have the names of people for these questions because the survey didn't capture that, but it says the specific question is, my question is, how do we convert possible clients? But really what I'm sensing here from this email is that they're going to companies, they provide a HR service. And a particular example they've used is there's a company with 20 people who's doing a lot of things wrong with their staff, but they're saying they sort of see the value of it, but they're saying we'll get back to you when we have time. So how would you help to increase people's ability in that sort of instance when to overcome those sort of objections around the
Well, I mean,
time
first
issue?
of all, I think it's almost a little bit short-sighted to focus on any one particular company. I mean, there can be 100
Mm,
reasons that you're not aware of as to why any one particular company doesn't want to do business with you right now this month. You really don't know. They might be gearing up for a sale of the business. They might be planning on closing the business. They might be, planning on moving head office. You really don't know all the information about any one particular company. So at first you have to actually identify who is the exact type of company that you can help, or the exact type of individual you can help, and create a target market, a niche of a few hundred companies, or a few hundred individuals, or a few thousand companies, or a few thousand individuals. And then don't get hung up on any one particular company's response to that. You really don't know what's going on behind closed doors in any particular person's life or company's life, and they're not.
mm.
They may have only just met you. So hence, you don't know if they're telling you everything that could be going on. Second thing is the huge mistake all small businesses make consistently, and this one mistake will literally prevent you from getting, a decent business going, is that you go in trying to pitch a core product. No one's interested in your core product if they've never had an experience of your business before. You've got to go in and pitch what I call a product for prospects. If you're going in there and saying, here's a £10,000 package, then effectively, they don't have many opportunities to test you out unless it's going to cost 10 grand. If you go in there and say, here's something we can do for £250 just to test us out, then you've got a great opportunity to continue the relationship.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good insight there, Dan, around making sure that you've got the right ability to give people a low cost option of what you often call, which is a product for prospects, and give people free examples or low cost opportunities or low risk opportunities as well, where they can get a lot of value at very little risk or cost to them. If they like what they see, then obviously they'll come back for more. Um, and so a quick question we've got here, Dan, is. What happens when you've got large organizations who keep saying to you, we love what you do, but you're too small a company to work with us?
There's a couple of things that you can do. The first one is you can go and work with smaller organizations. They might actually be helping you in the long run. I mean, they may be incredibly accurate in their perception that you are genuinely too small to work with them.
Yeah.
Because with a big company, if something's working, they want to be able to roll it out to more and more departments. And if they can't see how your business can scale up, then really it might work on a small scale, but they're not interested in that. They're looking for things that can go to a bigger scale. So you may want to choose some smaller competitors, the number 4 or 5 in the marketplace, as opposed to the number 1, 2, and 3.
Mm.
That's one option. The second option is you may want to productize what it is that you do, because if you productize what you do, then you can show that you can scale up to meet demand. But it has to be productized. So that's an important one. Or the third one is to do joint ventures and partnerships where you enhance your capacity by doing a joint venture and partnership. So you might actually go in and do a joint venture and partnership with a company that already has 12 other consultants, and you say, if I can win this particular business, will you go in under my brand, and all of your guys have to carry my business card and work with my team in order to process this big client. And that way, when you go back to the client, you can say, we actually now have the capacity. We have 12 new consultants on our team that we have in place, ready to go if you want to go ahead. So there's a couple of ways that you could scale.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a great one, because you can leverage off the experience and the expertise and the stories as well, and case studies even of those clients you do joint venture with. Very, very useful way of doing that. And I know that you've got to shoot, Dan, because you're on a tight time budget, but we just got a couple of last quick questions before we go. And one sort of leads into the other, actually. There's one about saying, what are your views on advertising in printed publications? That's one. But the other question, which we can tie in with that, is also about a client runs free events and some of the marketing strategies don't seem to have that they're really struggling with filling their events. So I was wondering, I know that you've done this a lot over the years, so they've got free workshops they're struggling to fill, and also what are your insights around paid advertisements in publications?
I mean, with paid advertising, you've got to conduct small tested ads. So you've got to, take out, 5 centimeters deep, 3 columns wide, in the ad before you go and take a 20 by 3 ad. So you've got to take out a small version of the ad just to see whether you get some sort of a response. In order to test these things. The thing with advertising is, I'll say this: don't do advertising unless you know you have a killer sales process, because
Yeah.
there's no point generating 100 leads if you don't know how to process those leads and turn them into raving fan customers and clients. You could create 1,000 leads, and if you don't have a sales process, you just can't make that work. You just cannot. You cannot make the return on investment, because marketing is only going to set up an opportunity for you to sit in front of someone. In most cases, in a small business, if you're then finally sitting in front of someone and they're all saying no because your sales process isn't as good as it should be, then marketing is not going to work too well. The reason that I've been successful with marketing is because I can afford to get it wrong 9 times out of 10, because our sales process is so strong. Even if an advertisement produces 10 leads, we know that we can probably get 2 or 3 sales from that. So we know how to convert sales. So hence, we can make it work. For filling events is really hard. You got to approach it from 20 different angles. You got to have some affiliates. You got to have some databases, some advertising, some social media. It's a real trick. I think that would almost be an entire one day workshop all on its own, just called filling events.
Definitely.
But I mean, look, you can fill events. There's a lot to it. We've had something like 60,000 people through events so far in the UK. So it's possible. It's just you gotta. There's a lot to it. That's a big question.
Yeah, and I think that there's, you might want to look at paid versus free, because there was a lot of free events, but there's a lot of events now and a lot of companies like Triumph and many others who now have made the shift from being free event to now paying for the event, because the caliber of people being there is often much higher, and you're getting people who are serious there as well. And otherwise, you get 50 people that book up and only 15, 20 people that show up. So, yeah. And the final question before we head off, Dan, because I know you've got to shoot, is just, how do you get past with a sales proposal? How do you what sort of creative ideas might you have for getting your proposal through to, it doesn't have to be a large organization, but typically it would be a large organization where there might be a gatekeeper in place. Would you have a creative idea that you could just share with us for this particular client who is struggling to get past the first person, and they're typically using email as the first point of contact?
It is a really tricky one, and in all honesty, I don't do a lot of selling to large organisations, so it's not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
I have done some sales to large organisations, and the only way I've ever been able to get in with large organisations is when I actually know the people and I meet them outside of work hours. So almost all of my large organisation deals is when I actually go to like for example, I'm just thinking of some of the large organisation deals. They've almost always come to me through the board of a charity. I sit on the number of boards of different charities, and almost always the boards of charities are full of people who hold really high positions in different companies. And we're not there for networking. We're definitely not there for networking. But you go out for drinks with these people afterwards, or you go and grab a meal with these people afterwards, and conversation naturally turns to business. And then, it's like, actually, I think I could do something with you. You could do something with us, and it's turned into business. And that's been my only experience. I can only speak from the experience of doing that. I think with large companies, you know, the number one thing to consider is that anyone in a large company, their primary concern is to not look stupid, not get fired. Their secondary concern is, is this going to result in them looking good and winning some brownie points? So every step of the way, you've got to realize that you're actually dealing with a person who's fearful for their job. They don't want to make a recommendation that makes them look stupid, and they want to earn some brownie points with their peers. So you got to really structure everything around that concept that you're there to make people look good. You need to associate with the right brands, with the right testimonials. You need to take the time to get to know what they're up to, as in any sale.
Mm. Excellent. Excellent. Very, very wise words there. And I think that becoming creative, I was just listening to Richard Reed last night and he was saying that, well, do you just want to mute yourself there, Dan, please? Just getting a bit of reverb. But yeah, he was saying that he'd dress up, he'd go into different presentations and go in dressed up just to stand out from the crowd. And really, he went dressed as a vicar one day. So this is how he cracked the big clients, where he got them on board to get innocent juices out there to the mass markets. He'd come up with some very creative out there ideas. So, thinking outside the box can often be a good one.
I just want to share one last quick story. I once landed a client because they said, "Can you send through some testimonials?" And this was years and years ago. I cut out from a magazine photos of Arnold Schwarzenegger and like Elle Macpherson and all of these celebrities, and I just put all this handwritten celebrity endorsements, and I put that in amongst all the testimonials. So it was just so stupid. It was like, here's all our client testimonials, and here's our celebrity endorsements. And
here's Arnie saying you're awesome.
I'll definitely be going back. And and Elle Macpherson saying not only are they a great organisation, they're also very sexy, and it was just playful and stupid. But we put all throughout the information we sent was not just testimonials but celebrity endorsements. So, getting a bit creative was a bit fun as well.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Dan, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the interview today, and thank you for putting aside your time, because I know that you charge, £1,600 to £4,000 a day for your time type of scenario. So I really do value what you're doing here, and thank you for sharing with people that are tuning into this, both on the webinar and the recorded version of it as well. The insights you've used, and sharing with you how you've applied particularly the rev sales system into your business and the philosophies that go behind that, because I think it's so much easier sometimes to relate to concepts when it's actually told from a practical experience as opposed to just learning the theory of it. So big thank you, Dan.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be letting you know more about the KPI program and how you can get in touch with that in the coming weeks and months. But for now, I just want to quickly let you know about is that what we have coming up in the next couple of weeks is I'm going to be doing a quick case study of some of the world's top and the UK's leading entrepreneurs. They're people like James Caan, Duncan Bannatyne, Richard Branson, Sir Richard Branson, I should say, Robert Kiyosaki. And what we're going to be looking at is just sort of breaking down, how did they start off in their careers? What skills did they master when they first started out in business? It's going to be very interesting, very insightful, so make sure you tune in and stay updated for some lessons on that. Some notices on that, I should say. And finally, the last thing I just want to let you know before we tune off is that the Rev Sales system, if you're interested in knowing how you're going to get results similar to what Dan and Triumphant has achieved over the many years they've been in business, is that the Rev Sales system is doing exactly what we spoke about today. It's about creating that sales process for your business. Everything comes complete with scripts and templates. It's literally just turnkey operation with a lot of videos and training manuals, etc. So you can actually create scripts, create presentations, which allow people to allow you to be able to move them through their buyer cycle and their sales cycle, which are these two little diagrams you see below. And essentially, we'll be sharing with you a bit more about that in the coming months, but that'll be launching, the next program will be launching in September, so stay tuned for that. But for now, thank you for tuning in, thank you for listening, and wish you all the best of applying what you've taught. Don't just walk away from this and think, oh, okay, and do nothing. Even if it's just one or two ideas, put them into practice and enjoy playing with the sales process and looking at how you can influence on a much greater level. Until then, take care. Bye.